Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no copay. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, this is a friendly reminder that we are here for entertainment purposes only. We may not even be that entertaining at times, but this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, check with your healthcare professionals before making any lifestyle changes or medicine changes. What we're talking about is our clinical experience and what we've seen. And so if you really want our advice, you can consult us. You can actually consult me as a doctor, or you can consult my guest and get all your questions answered. But we can't give free medical advice because we can't pay our bills with that, but we can help to educate you a bit and allow you to think a little bit. And always reach out to your medical professional before making any lifestyle changes. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Don't say we didn't warn you. November is upon us. Here we go. This is the danger time of the year for our waistlines and our metabolic health and our diabetes and all that, all these temptations and treats and all those things. So I want to thank my sponsors here that help us to get back on track or to stay on track during these crazy times. First of all, Keto Mojo, keto-mojo.com. Thank you for having a great ketone meter and glucose meter that I use with my patients, and it helps us to determine if we are eating the right stuff and if it's truly keto or not. And also Health Code, they're doing great work. Both of my parents take it now to help with mental and cognition and mental health and all that. So Health Code, Get Health, GETHLTH.com. MedHealth is the discount code if you want to get that for your family members. Great ingredients, great shakes, chocolate and vanilla. So thank you to my sponsors. They're doing such great work, and I appreciate them getting these episodes out and sticking by us and getting us to the end of the year here. So thank you for listening and enjoy this episode.
Discover a new path to wellness at Arizona Metabolic Health. Dr. Brian Lenzkes offers advanced medicine and personalized care, treating the root causes of your health concerns, not just the symptoms. Whether you're seeking direct primary care, effective diabetes management, or medical weight loss, with a holistic approach, our team is here to guide you every step of the way. Visit ArizonaMetabolicHealth.com today to learn more about our innovative health solutions.
Hello and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. I think this is a first actually with Mike Davis, Guy in Austin. This is his third time coming back. We've been trying to convert each other, and this is lucky number 3 on Friday the 13th, no less. It's episode number, I had to go back and look, 116 and episode 178. Go back and listen to these things. I mean, he's one of my favorite guys. I love having him on. He's my token atheist liberal that I let on my podcast, but the point is, we see the world the same way, and we have so much in common. And so many of the people, he goes, Brian, you got to listen to this guy. He's reasonable. I'm like, oh my gosh, like Jimmy Dore being one of them, right? And he goes, I love this guy, and because you can be on different sides and still speak the truth and still respect each other and love each other and be kind to each other. And I think this is a huge lesson that we're missing out in medicine in particular, but in life, we see people so divided. So, with that being said, Mike, welcome back, man. So awesome to have you back. I know you're a busy guy, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thanks, Doc. I appreciate it. I always enjoy talking to you. And we don't get to have like phone chatter much, but we do these interviews, and it's my chance to have a conversation with you. A friend of mine, Les from Twitter, is one of your patients.
He's awesome guy.
With you and talk to you in your office.
Yeah, didn't he come have a steak with you too? And I was jealous of that.
He's been here a couple of times. I think we'll be seeing him again not too long from now, but we'll work that out.
I'm going to get myself out to Austin one of these days, man. I got to do it. Yeah.
We couldn't wait to have, we'd love to have you visit. I'm looking forward to talking to you about some things. And I mentioned earlier this week, you may have noticed I tagged you on a tweet from PD Mangan. And this is the thing I'm putting it up front, because when we talk, we always digress.
Yeah. We're going to be, anyone listening, get your shoes on, because we're probably going to be all over the place. And guess what? Mike's my only guest who interviews me more than I interview him. So it's fun. So I'm like, I have to be on the edge. But the good news is, and the smart thing is, I have editing privileges. So if I say something really dumb, I could edit it out. But
Ah,
I
right.
haven't done it yet. No, as a matter of fact, I'll show my humanity and leave it in there. How's that? This would be
Well,
a
okay.
free deal, right?
But if I look too dumb, you can definitely edit that.
Oh no, I'm keeping that for sure, Mike.
I knew you
That
would.
helps my cause, you know. So
Uh,
what's your first one? I know what it
but
is, and yeah, I agree with PD just about on
okay,
everything.
so this is the PD quote, and it actually the reason I want to discuss it with you is it goes to all kinds of stuff, including, and if you hear that when I read it, you're going to say, "How does it have anything to do with that?" Well, that's the story I'm going to tell about this tweet. But this is going to relate to gender roles in a marriage. This is something I want to talk to you about: gender roles in a marriage.
Wait a minute, what does this
Uh,
have to do with exercise, man? Oh, you'll lock it.
yeah,
You'll tie it in for us
what's
simpletons.
that
All
going to
right.
do? And then it's also going to have to do with stress of running your own business, which is something that you can relate to. And then it's going to relate to processing that stress with exercise, which is where, of course, Mangan ends up. The quote from him on Twitter is: "The mental health benefits of exercise are as or even more important than the physical health benefits. Better mood, greater clarity of thought. Anyone who exercises regularly knows this." And what I want to start with is just an unequivocal endorsement. PD Mangan is 100% right. I love pull ups. And if I don't do my pull ups, I miss them. It makes me grumpy if I don't get my exercise in. So, first question for you, Doc, what's your take? Just the exercise. I'm going to change it here in a second, but just for exercise alone, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. You know, I'm with you on that. And again, I would my caveat to that would be it's not just exercise, it's lifestyle, you know, stress, sleep, all these other factors, right? But exercise is super important for mental health. And I think the mental health, what the statement he made was that the mental health benefits outweigh the basically the body composition and health other health benefits. But if you're not in a healthy body, your brain isn't healthy, right? So the
Right?
big thing we're coming back to, and Callie Means and all my friends out there doing great work are talking about the mental health aspects of metabolic health, right? We're and we just had a conference. The whole first day was on mental health, schizophrenia, bipolar, anorexia, all these mental health issues that get better when you focus on metabolic health. So exercise is a huge component of that. Exercise increases blood flow to the brain. It releases, it decreases the stress hormones. It does so much. And if you look at all the data on longevity and healthy longevity, like lifespan and, the quality of life,
Right. Health span.
exercise is a health span. Yeah. Thanks. I knew you'd help me out. Uh, is exercise. And so the studies show, and Ben Bakikio, another workout guy, was arguing with me about it. He goes, the number one indicator of longevity and healthy longevity is muscle mass. And the data is there. I've looked at the studies. He sent me all of them. And so, yes, if you have muscle mass, so you can lose weight, right? And have no muscle mass. And I don't think you're going to be as healthy and mentally healthy. Exercise, not only that, getting out in the sun. Like this morning, I went for a mountain bike ride with a friend of mine. It was epic, and we had a blast when none of us wrecked. And just spending that time and talking and, going up hills and down hills and around curves. And, there's something to that where you connect with nature, and those things are all, there's all this science out there with grounding and getting in contact with the dirt. And I think that we're missing that in society. And I think that might be a big part of our mental health issues.
Okay, I want to stop you there because this is just it's funny. We didn't rehearse. I told you I have some notes if you want to review them before we start the interview. You're just like, no, let's just get rolling. Let's just start talking.
Yeah,
It'll
I'm
work
on the
itself
fly. If
out.
I think about stuff, I'm gonna like, if you hit the ball high in the air and I'm in the outfield and I have to run it, if I'm in the shortstop position, I'll just react and get the ball. But if I think about it too much, I'll miss the ball.
Well, okay, so that might have it might have been that if we'd gone over the notes, we would have had a less good start for me than that. You started talking about my question and you ended up talking exactly where I wanted to take it, which is sunshine. That is, I want to substitute for PD Mangan's quote, as much as I agree, I endorse the importance of exercise, sun exposure. It's not just that it's going to give you the healthy vitamin D benefit, it's going to improve your mood, it's going to improve your clarity of thought. It's not, and just like you said, it's not just one thing. It's not just nutrition, it's not just exercise, it's sleep, it's lifestyle. There's lots of stuff that goes into it. But when I saw that tweet from Mangan, what I thought was I agree with him about exercise, but I would agree with him even more if he said sun exposure. And now that sets me up for the little story I'm going to tell you to sort of illustrate this point. And in the story, I have some questions for you along the way. So it starts with this. I want to take you back to the 90s when I'm newly married with my wife, Marnia, and we're in New Jersey and we're in our 20s. And you and I talk about marriage a lot. So the marriage component of this is going to have several facets. One of those facets is gender roles. When we got married in our 20s, I was going to be a student. I was studying to be an English professor, and my wife supported us. And there was a period at the beginning of our marriage when I had tuition covered by a fellowship, and I had a tiny stipend in graduate school, but I did not have money to pay for more than our rent. I couldn't buy groceries. I couldn't buy gas. She went out and got a job and took care of that stuff. And so there's going to be a later point in the story. We're going to say, well, Mike, you sure sound like a 50s conformist American gender type guy who wants men to wear the pants or whatever. And that when we get to that part of the story, I want you to think back. That is not who we are. We are a couple who have always found our way to what's comfortable for us being with each other. And in the beginning, that was my wife working while I was a full-time student. So there's no traditional gender role thing in our background. That's to start with. But what is she doing in this job? She goes to work for an advertising agency, and this agency is a spinoff from a bigger agency. And her boss is a guy who has one big client. The big agency he was with, they had lots of national retail chain clients. But he's moved over, and he's got one national retail chain client, and she's essentially his office manager. And she looks at his numbers, and she works for him for about 5 years. She looks at his numbers, and she can tell when he's getting nervous every year when it's time to renew that contract. Because if he doesn't get that one big client back, he's got a bunch of other clients, like dozens of other small clients. But she's looking at the numbers and she's saying, if the big retail chain doesn't renew, his expenses are going to eat up his margins real quick. Now, I'm telling you that story about how in the beginning of our marriage, she was aware, she was subject. It's stressful to own a business. If that guy doesn't renew the contract, his business goes under. She can go be an office manager somewhere else. It's not a big deal for her. But to her boss, he's incredibly stressed out every year in the weeks leading up to this renewal. And so throughout our marriage, that's the 90s, right? That's more than 30 years. We got married in 91, 30 years ago, that this is the start of our marriage. And what we say to each other when the discussion of starting our own business comes up over and over again is, we don't want to be like her boss in New Jersey. If we're going to be a business, we don't want to have just one client. Everything depends on that client. But here's the thing, Brian. I started my own business 2.5 years ago. I was only able to do it because I had one really big client. I would never have been able to make it happen building piecemeal, small client by small client. I had the chance to do it, and my wife signed off. She's like, well, you don't get to do business according to your preferences. You have to do business according to what's viable. And what's viable is you got somebody willing to pay you. So let's start there and build from there. Trying to build out. That's background. And so far, we've touched on gender roles. And I want to ask you about gender roles in your own marriage and how that works out at a point that's convenient to you. And we've also talked about marital stress related to jobs, founding our own business, saying the one thing we're not going to do is have just one main client, and then founding a business that relies, at least for its start, on one main client. Well, last year, that client loved us. They wanted us so badly. They had everything set up. The day the contract could go through, we had the contract in place. We were very confident the whole time going into the school year that we had this big client wrapped up. We did a great job for them, got great feedback from them. Everybody, all indications are they want us back. But there's new leadership, sweeping new policies. No one can guarantee us that they're going to renew our contract. Now, to be clear, we're renewed. It's good. There's a happy ending in the story. But as we're coming into the school year, we are anxious, both of it. We're both feeling the stress our boss in New Jersey used to feel, right? It doesn't matter that we picked up all these additional small clients. If we don't get the big client back, our expenses are going to eat up our margins lickety split. So we're concerned about it, and we're both processing our stress in our own ways. One way that I process my stress is solar noon is about 140 every day in Austin. If I'm home, that is, if I'm working from home, and most days I do work from home, If I'm home, I want to be outside no later than 1:10, 30 minutes before solar noon. And I want to stay outside at least half an hour past 1:40 solar noon, about 2:10. I want that hour. And a thing you may remember about me is that I'm an OMAD guy. I only eat one meal a day. I eat it in the evening. I do not take a lunch break. I do not need a lunch break. I'm not saying, honey, I need to go have an hour for lunch and then I need to go spend an hour getting sun. I'm taking the hour that other people take and spend on lunch, and I'm going to go spend it doing my pull-ups and getting some sunshine. But in the past, say like 10 days, we're recording at the end of what's been a very stressful period for us in the marriage and for my business. I had to deliver 3 of the 4 most important sales presentations of my life in the last 10 days. We have been frantic. We have been making materials. And when I say we, I mean both of us. We are business partners. We share the load. We are both hard workers. We're both capable people, but we have different skill sets and we do different things. We're working around the clock doing these presentations. Yay, 2 of the presentations went really well. Third one, hard to read. Not sure what's going to happen with that. But we look back on the 2 most important of those 3 presentations and say, we worked really hard and we couldn't have anticipated how to do that much better. And we're happy with the outcome. But in the run up to those presentations, my wife was so mad at me, Doc. Every day, 1:10, I'm printing out a big sheet of materials we spent the morning generating, and I'm going to go proofread them outside in the backyard. And I'm going to get them sweaty, and the wind's going to curl the paper, and I'm going to come back in, and it's going to take longer than it would have taken if I'd just been in the room, and it's driving my wife crazy that I got to go out there and get my sunshine. And what's clear to me, it's evidently not clear to her, but it's 100% clear to me, is 9:30 that night when she needs me to proofread something, I'm going to be in condition to proof it because I took that hour to go do some gardening and some pull-ups and get some sunshine and be refreshed and revitalized. But because I took that time, I'm going to be sharp at 9:30 at night. And if I don't take that time, we're going to have to stop by 8 p.m. No matter how willing we are to push ourselves, we're just not going to have anything left in the tank. So we go through this thing. It all works out well. The sweeping new changes didn't change what the institution needs from us. Everything's fine. And not only that, but it looks like we're going to have a much better second full year than we had in our first full year. And we're both very excited about that. But we handle stress in different ways. And here's what I thought, I'm going to get to talk to my friend Brian.
Mike, I think this whole lead up is you want me and PD to both agree with you, and you got to do that, and then we're gonna outnumber your wife, and then I gotta have her on next time. But I hope she's listening. How do you handle
stress with you're running your own business?
So
right, your wife thinks you should be doing something. You're like, I'll do it, just not the way you want me to. How's that stressful?
I've got a worse situation than you, I think. So we can compare notes. But I love your point. But your point is, look, you know what works for you. If going out and sitting in the sun for an hour and exercising works for you, no one else can judge that. There's certain things I do, and I go, as a matter of fact, I had a little break. My wife had a meeting today, and I said, you know what? I'm going to go outside. I'm interviewing another guy who I loved later, and I'm like, I want to finish his book. Went out in the sun with my dogs and relaxed, and I was like, chill. It's like a vacation day, right? And so I'm like, little stuff like that. If you can get that little break and go for a bike ride or go do something, you're right. Because if you sit there for an hour eating garbage food, you're wasting an hour and really not accomplishing it. And you're not going to be ready to go at the end of the day. So I think a lot of us, and myself included, for 18 years, probably 25 years of my life, I just burned it at both ends. It worked, never stopped.
Right.
Never, just keep grinding. You keep grinding. I was working 16, 18-hour days, and I go, okay, the pain is bad enough, whereas this isn't worth it for me. And yeah, the stress of you haven't got to the gender role things, but what I will tell you, what was on my mind while you were talking was when I first got married, right? We dated for 8 years. We broke up for a year. We got back together and go, okay, this is it. We're going to do this. We got married. I go off to med school. I'm not making any money. I come out of med school, $350,000 in debt. Who paid my mortgage and all that stuff? My wife. She worked that whole time when I was in school studying. How am I going to, you have no income. Plus I'm buying books and parking passes, and, they raise your tuition every
Mhm.
semester pretty much. So what are you gonna do? Quit in the middle when they keep raising? What are you gonna do? There's nothing. You're stuck. Like you're 3 years into med school and they raise it $15,000 next year. You go, okay, what are you gonna do? You have no choice. So I had zero income, and not only that, like being homeless, you're not in debt. When you're $350,000 in debt, you go, okay, I got to work hard. And so I did, and I worked hard, really hard, all those times. And my wife worked also, but when the kids were young, she said, I want to be home with the kids. So she did volunteer work at school and did all those kind of things and loved it. And then she became the principal of a school when once the kid got out of school, and she loved that too. And then when we moved to Arizona, she retired from that job. And the poor lady is now my office manager in Arizona. I have Mary in San Diego running that, and I have my wife running this, and so I work for her. So now she's texting me, "Did you take care of this? I'll get it. I'll get to it. I promise. I got things going on." But it's amazing, and again, the stress level for me. One of the craziest thing I probably did was when I left my old office. Right, I had financial security, but at what cost? Right,
Right.
at what cost? In our life right now is the best it's ever been
And
because
she was supportive all the way through. Did she have
she
doubts?
said
How did that
finally,
go?
she said, I called her and like I think I told you the situation before, but I walked in one day. It was when Kobe Bryant died. And I just got back from low carb Boca Raton. I was gone for 3 days. And I walked in the office and was like, I had 300 messages. I was scheduled through lunch. I was getting home at 11 at night, getting up at 4 in the morning, going back to the hospital and then doing rounds and catch and I had for a month. And I said, on the third day I came back and I go, what? I talked to my senior partner. I go, this is ridiculous. I mean, I need help. And what they did is when I was gone, all my other partners were so busy. If my patients were sick, they'd say, go to the ER, so I get back and those patients are mad at me. I was like, I wouldn't have made that. I would have saw you. I would have taken care of you, but they couldn't. So I realized they were all drowning, busy, and so was I. So no one can help. If you're all drowning, no one can help each other. Someone has to swim to the shore, right, and get
Right.
out.
Right.
And so I went in just to have a conversation. I wasn't planning on quitting. I was fed up. There was a lot of politics and things I didn't like, and and again, I wasn't a good fit because I became doing metabolic health stuff, right, in an HMO practice, and you have a 15-minute follow up, and I'm going to talk to people an hour to try to explain how to avoid diabetes and help to get them healthier. But then what cost was that? I'd work through lunch every day. I'd put my most complicated patients before lunch and work through lunch. And then all the callbacks and paperwork and all the stuff I should have done at lunch, I had to do after work. So I wouldn't get home till 8 at night. Right. So at some point you go, okay, I'm making money, but I can't take a day off. I'm a
Right.
hostage. I have scheduled out physicals. Like you have over 2,000 patients. You have no place to put those people. Where do you put them? Like you can, if I'm doing physicals on everyone, I have to do. You got 2,000 patients. Do the math. How many physicals are you doing a day just for physicals, not for urgent stuff? And so all I wanted was a nurse practitioner to take some of the burden off. And I said, I'll pay every dime. It's not about the money. I'll pay the money to get someone to help me. I just need to be freed up a little bit, right? If someone has the stuff he knows, they don't have to see me necessarily. We have
Right.
good people who know how to do that. And he said, there's just not enough room. And I said, well, you know what? If I can't get a full-time nurse practitioner by June, this is in January of 2020, which is when COVID started.
Right.
Not knowing what was coming, I said, okay, you know what? If you can't do it, then I guess because he basically was saying you're ungrateful. You know how much money you made last year? I go, I know, but I was working 18-hour days every day. It wasn't to make more money. It was because my patients were in need, and I had to provide that need. If I could lose a quarter of that money and pay someone to do it, I would have done it. But I have
Sure.
not. So, anyways, it was when Kobe died. And I said, how much would Kobe have given up to have one more day with his family?
Right.
Right. And if Kobe's willing to do it, am I? I'm like, yeah. So I go, you know what? If we're not going to come to an agreement, then my lease was up in June. I go, I'm leaving in June. He goes, go ahead and look for a job then. I said, okay. And then I walked out of that room, called my wife and go, honey, I think I just resigned. Her first words was like, what took you so long, Brian? I've been telling you that for two
Oh,
years. Yeah, because
that's
there was other issues with the building. There was mold, and I had a mold allergy, and that was miserable. I had a lot of stuff going on, and she said, "Get out." And I go, "Yeah, but this is our finance. We'll make it work. Don't worry about it." Like she was like that. So she handles that kind of financial stress. She goes, "Because we did it before. I think I told you, but we had an embezzlement in that practice in 2011, and so I didn't get a paycheck for a few months. And guess what? it worked out. We got rid of cable. We got rid of stupid stuff we didn't need. You go, I don't need this stuff. Like, what's important? The relationship, the kids, life, going and sit in the pool. And it's probably the best Christmas we ever had because we all made stuff for each other and like it was fun. And, we had no money. What do you
Right.
do? You know?
Yeah.
So
That is
the
a great
point
story.
is, the point is you make the best of it. So once you lose that contract, then you go, okay, this is our situation. What do we do? Do we downsize? What do we do? You have to make it work, right?
You do. And I just love one thing that I feel a kinship with you about is the profound satisfaction you have in your marriage and how much I love it. Even if my wife and I process stress in different ways, she's on board, she's committed, we're on the ride together, we're doing what we can. And so to wrap up with the gender role component of it, I now do the 50s conformist America male stuff. I'm the guy who does the heavy lifting. I do the presentations. I'm the one who travels. If I need to be in 6 different cities Monday to Saturday and be away from the house for a week and come back on Sunday and get something, then to go out for another week, I'm the one who's going to do that. And uh, a big difference between us, sort of culturally, is my wife is Latina, and her family does not like the idea of her going out after dark by herself. And so it would bother them if she needed to go out in the dark to run an errand, just to go to the store after
Uh-huh.
nightfall. I was supposed to accompany her. When we were in New Jersey, she went back to Columbia University for her degree. That's in New York City, as you may know.
Well, yeah. What
And
country? What country was she from?
she's from El Paso. She's a
Yeah, yeah.
Texan, but she's of Mexican heritage.
Oh, Mexican.
So,
Yeah, I was just curious because I know there's, in Guatemala they have a different perspectives. Different
oh, I
places they have
see.
a different perspectives. I was just curious on that.
So
But
this
yeah, my
is
friend from Guatemala, like they're if you have a male friend, that's not you can't do that. You got to,
yeah,
yeah.
that kind of mentality
Hmm.
right there. And yes, but she's not just that Mexican idea. There's a border Mexican culture that she represents very well. I suspect you know it fairly well from California. And the idea is that when she went to Columbia in New York City from our home in New Jersey, I was supposed to accompany her on the train to Penn Station and then on the subway to her class and then sit outside her class for her 3 hour night class and escort her home. Her family's expectation was that I would not let my wife take herself to her graduate program in New York City by herself. And of course, I was teaching night classes at the time. There was no way I could accompany her on all that. But for the sake of her mother and her grandparents, she had to give the impression that she had this bodyguard with her going into New York City 3 or 4 nights a week. But that's just the difference of, and I'm from a different culture. My mom is a
But
white
is your wife
woman.
is your wife nervous about going out by herself after dark or no?
No, no,
No, her
I mean,
family
she
is.
totally
Yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to do
But
it.
so
Yeah,
she's tough. Yeah.
it wasn't her choice to do that. It was like her grandparents and her mother were hung up on it. Her dad kind of knew what the score was and was realistic about things.
Well, I
But
think I think you do, and I think you like when you go to like I'll tell you what, I was in El Salvador the last time I went there, I said, and they're having unbelievable changes in the country right now, which are amazing to hear about. But it's a God thing, man. But but back then there were 6 or 7 of us. We just went across to this little mall to get dinner, and we were like stressed, 6 or 7 big guys, and you're like, because some guys pull up with machine guns, like it doesn't matter how big you are. Yeah, but if you're not armed and you can't be armed, but they don't care about that. So, anyways, you start realizing, yeah, certain places they go, you don't go after dark. I mean, people are telling us stories like 2 guys get together for a drink, and then the other guy he disappears, get killed on the way back to his car. I mean, it's like that. So I get it. So you want to, and when you grow up in that situation, you're aware of what can happen, and a lot of us Americans are naive. Oh
right.
yeah, I'm fine. I'll just go out by myself, walking around the. No, you don't do that there.
Oh no,
So
you're 100% right. It's not that it's not rooted in something real, and the reasons for the concern are real, but it is pretty safe to
but
take the subway
culture,
to the
yeah,
Penn
yeah,
Station.
yeah, exactly right.
Or at
Or
least
it
in the
was at
90s, it
that
was.
time.
Yes, yes,
At
in the
that time,
90s.
in the
Um,
'90s, yes, I will agree with you. Yes.
so anyway, when it was, we didn't have any concerns about it. But the point is now, I'm the guy who leaves. She does the office work. She stays. I'm the guy who goes out into the world and faces those dangers. And I'd rather be the one who do that. To
Well,
do
and
that, right?
well, I would say, Mike, I don't think it's a gender role. I think it's a
Okay.
personality role, right? Because temperament role, because you may be the outgoing one that speaks and you like that. Like It's funny. My wife, my wife's doing a podcast. Someone asked her to do the podcast. She's stressing about it, right? And I'm like, it's they're just gonna ask you, like, don't worry about it. Just be yourself. And but it's like
Right,
her, not her forte. And so for her, that's odd. For me, it's like, okay, you want to talk? Here we go. But
right,
and then but for her, like she could take care of my book, she could take care of all this like detailed stuff and take care of it. Like for me, like it's not my forte. So I don't
right,
do that stuff. So she's like, if people ask me like, what's your mortgage rate? What's it? I'm like, I ask my wife, I don't know. I don't take care of
right,
any of that because when I was so busy all the time, I didn't have time to deal with it. I go, honey, you're gonna have to take care of it. I'm not dealing with it, right? Show me what it is a little bit, but so I have some knowledge, but I think sometimes in a business relationship or a personal relationship, like we just like anything, some people are, when you ask about traditional gender roles, what do I think about that? I was like, okay, I know guys who their wife is making a lot of money in tech or whatever.
right.
Someone's got to take care of the kids. You want to pay someone, or is it more cost effective for him to stay home, be with the kid, take them to the ballpark and do that? I have no I have no problem with that. Like
Right,
whatever
right.
works for you guys, right? Because I'm telling you, you see, like, and plus, who do you want to leave your kids with someone you don't know, or do you want to leave it with a family member or someone that you trust, right? I mean, there's a lot to that why some of those roles are changing. But I think having the support and knowing you're on the same team, because that's the big one, is realizing, hey, we're both in the same,
Exactly. No,
you both want to be.
I knew you were going to say something like that. We're very similar in thinking. You know what? Screw gender roles. Let's do what works for us as a
What
couple.
works
That's
ultimately,
the thing.
diet wise, nutrition wise. Like, I'm not going to fight with you if it's working for you, but if your life's a disaster, maybe we talk, right?
Right.
Like if you
And
tell me
it's
you're depressed and you're fighting with your wife all the time, I might say, hey, Mike, have you ever thought about religion? Right? Have you ever thought about that? Because it works for me, but maybe it doesn't work for you, right? But if your life's good, I'm not going to convert you to what I'm doing because it's working. Like what you're doing, I wouldn't change it. So I think though everyone is, we see it on Twitter. Someone will say, "This is what I had for lunch," and you'll get 30 comments like, "Oh, you had it on a paper plate. How come you didn't do this? Why'd you, right?" It's amazing. Like it's like you go of all the things. Like I don't have time to judge someone's meal. Like, are you doing okay? And you're losing weight and you're feeling right. Okay, cool, great. If you have string beans on there, I'm not going to say there's chemicals from the whatever.
right.
I mean, it is amazing how people get so worked up, and I think over the last few years you realize what really matters. Does that stuff
Right.
really matter? When it comes down to it. As
I,
long as you go out in the
I
sun
agree
for
with
an
you.
hour and do your pull-ups. I think there's something wrong with you doing pull-ups, man. That's hard. Pull-ups are hard.
They really do help process. That's the thing. They really do help me process stress. That's why I'm not quibbling with Mank, and I'm saying I just put in sunshine too.
Yeah, work out in
But
the sun. I think he would agree with you too. If you can get out in the
oh,
sun and exercise, is better than like I'd rather go out on a bike ride than ride a stationary bike in the garage. But if it's
a
snowing, you
hundred
have no
percent.
choice, right? But yeah, I think and I think the other benefits too, like we started talking about, is exercise. You're bonding with people. If you're playing a pickleball, for instance, people go and play pickleball and then they talk and they blow off steam and then they go, hey, let's go, come on back to my place. We'll have dinner or whatever. Those kind of the social aspects of we're social creatures. Look what we went through, right? And I see the ramification of that. You divide people, you get them stressed out, you make them eat processed food, tell them they can't exercise. You can't go out in the sun because you might catch a germ. Those kind of things were so harmful, and people start drinking, going back to their Lucky Charms for breakfast because that's what they did when they didn't have stress. All the no vitamin D, which was a known. You could argue with your wife too. Vitamin D was a known risk factor for bad outcomes for COVID
Right,
hospitalization,
right.
low vitamin D levels. What does that mean? You're probably inside, stressed, not sleeping. Yeah, right. Being out in the dirt. I mean, I think there's definitely benefits to those things. Just being outside and seeing the birds fly by, or when you're under stress, just getting out a little bit. Like for me, if I go on a hike, I don't think about those stuff.
Right.
What else
And
works?
so
What else works is getting in cold water. If you do a cold plunge, you're not thinking about taxes. You don't care about the election. You don't care about that stuff. You're just like trying to stay warm. Right. So it puts but it does. And when your body wants to hyperventilate and freak out and yeah, right. And you go, okay, I have to calm this in this. And if you can do that, then you can do it when your wife irritates you or whatever. If
that's
you can bring that
yes.
calmness to it, right? Because
That
I'm not in
we
cold water. As long as I'm not
we
in
just
cold
got
water, I'm
back.
okay.
We just got back from a vacation to Iceland, which was a fantastic
Really?
once in a lifetime vacation that
And
we enjoyed.
Iceland is the nice one. Greenland is
But
the ugly one, right?
yes, that's right. Despite the names, but at one point we were in this hot tub that's on a river fed by glacial meltwater, and so the thing to do is to stay in the hot tub. and then go over the wall directly into this glacial meltwater and then come back into the thing.
Oh,
And everything
yeah.
you say about that will focus your attention on what's
Yep.
sure will. It sure will.
Yeah,
Uh,
and you know how to get out. But the hot, it's kind of interesting though, because the hot water kind of numbs you up. So when you first get in the cold, you don't feel the cold right away.
absolutely.
But then when you get
Absolutely.
in back in the hot water, you got tingles everywhere. It's kind of a weird situation, right?
Yes, it does get you to focus on things.
So when you went there, was it fun? Like, could you relax, or were you stressed about work stuff?
Uh, it was it was over the summer when we still thought everything was going to work
Oh,
out,
okay, good. Yeah,
and
yeah.
we didn't know the delays that were going to be so nerve wracking were ahead of us. So we weren't that stressed. It was a great vacation. Um, One of the first really fun, I guess, the first really fun vacation we've had since COVID. That was a great experience, and the I guess the final wrap up on the gender role thing is just like you not knowing your mortgage. I'm the one who's going to take the flight. I'm the one who's going to rent the car. I'm the one who's going to stay in the hotel room. My wife is the one who's going to book the flight. She's the one who's going to figure out which rental car company we're going to use. She's the one who's going to figure out which hotel company we're going to use. Because what would I do? Well, what's the cheapest flight? Is it United? I'm taking United. No, you have to get. She knows this. I don't keep up with this, but this is the kind of thing she keeps up with. No, it has to be American. It's only $35 more. And if you don't get X miles by July, you're going to lose your platinum status on American. So
Yeah, yeah,
you got
yeah.
to.
They know that stuff. Yeah, yeah.
She does that stuff effortlessly. She tracks that stuff. She knows it. She says she doesn't enjoy it. She complains about it, but she keeps up with that stuff with the tenacity that shows she has an aptitude for it that I do not. I can't. I would just book the cheapest flight. I would not think about it at that level.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, there's things you don't really think about. Like if you're doing flight, you go, okay, I have a connector, but it's in like somewhere where they get blizzards at that time of year. You go, okay, don't go there. If you go a different route, you're not gonna hit the blizzard. So people who travel a lot go, don't go, don't go that way, right? Like
right.
I'm giving a
She
talk
knows.
next weekend, and my buddy's like, do not fly into Oakland. I'm like, just booked it for Oakland. He's like, oh, it's gonna be a nightmare getting from there to where you're going. It's gonna be a nightmare, man. I'm telling you. Oh, I'm like, oh, shoot. Now you tell me. Shoot.
All
All
right.
right. I'm not
Too
used
late.
to it.
You should have had a Marnia. But that's exactly the kind of stuff my wife Marnia is great at anticipating and taking care of.
Yeah,
So,
and
and the
the
thing
other
is,
thing I'll tell you, like gender roles before we get off that topic, since we're going to cover all kinds of stuff. My wife drives when we come here. She drives from California to Arizona. Why? She likes driving. It relaxes her, right? As long as I'm not looking at what she's doing, I'm relaxed. So I'll do work. We listen to podcasts, we listen to music, we have a playlist and all that stuff. We have a good conversation, and I work. So whenever I have internet most of the time, so I could be doing my return calls and all that stuff while we're in the car, so we can get here and enjoy life a little bit. So but if it's snowing or raining, guess what? I'm driving. Like she wants me
right.
to drive. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'm good with that. I don't mind it. It doesn't bother me at all. So there's things like that where we, it's just sometimes we have aptitude, or it's the situation you're in and go, hey, if she had to finish a big paper, I'd say I'll drive you to finish your paper. It's just what it is, right? It's a trade
But
off.
that is exactly how we handle driving assignments. Who needs the free time? Who needs to be on their phone? Who needs to be doing something? And often it is sort of a default setting that she drives and I navigate because my wife is the smartest person I know in the world. She's better than I am at everything in the world.
Man, I know
But
what you're gonna say. Don't say it.
the
I know
one
what you're gonna
thing I
say.
can do that she can't do is when the pressure's on, I
Amen.
still know my right from my left. And if
My
she has
wife,
to make
oh
that
my
right from
God.
left call in like a heartbeat, she struggles with that one. Do we need to go right or left?
It's
That's not a
hilarious.
hard one for
We're the
me.
same way. My wife is the same way. Like we go hiking. She would get us lost in the middle of the jungle somewhere. Like her sense of direction. I'm like, look, the road is that way. You could hear the road, or you can see the mountain. This is the mountain that was on this side when we come in. So it's funny, like that sense of direction thing is definitely like we always laugh and we said because we get along really well. But if we went on the Amazing Race, holy cow, we would fight. That would be like when you're trying to hurry or you're hungry and tired and you're rushing and you don't know where you're going and you get lost and it's frustrating. Oh yeah, that's not good. We don't put ourselves in those situations because it's too frustrating.
that's that's what I think a good marriage is about, knowing what situations you should put yourself in as a couple and what situations you should say, you know what, that's really your department. Handle that without me. That's really my department. I'll go handle that without you. That kind of an arrangement.
Yeah, and I think that's why you and I connect on social media too, because we're both might not agree on everything, but we're reasonable about it. And not try to attack people and say you're an idiot because you believe that. Just go, oh, okay, you believe that, all right. You know, it's amazing. It is. It really is.
Yeah, the tendency to attack on social media is amazing. This is a weird little thing from our Iceland trip. We saw some basalt columns at a river gorge that my wife took a picture of and put the picture on her Facebook Iceland group to say, "Hey, the basalt's going vertically all in this part, but over here it bends. Why is that?" And there's got to be some. It's the group that she's in is an Iceland geology group. It's a perfectly reasonable place for her to ask that question, but there's that guy just waiting. You should Google basalt columns and warping.
Yeah.
You don't need to
Yeah.
bother us with that. Jeez, dude, she's asking the people who know.
I know it's amazing because then you might learn something else and go, what it says online is different than what in reality is what we know, right? And so, it's all that we're, and it's funny how I think you and I see it too, where people are either waiting to get offended or waiting to attack someone. They're
That's
waiting for
right.
you to say the wrong word. You spell something wrong, and they're in their glory saying, "You spelled the word wrong." Okay, dude. All right. It was a voice dictation, and it just didn't come out exactly right. But most people, if they'll have a grace for you or whatever. But yeah, it's true. I think these personalities come in, and I think that's part of it. And I do think that like a guy like you who's reasonable, I go, I already knew like this guy's probably in a stable relationship. He gets along with people because you're not out attacking people. Most of those guys that attack like crazy, some of these doctors who attack people all the time. I always think, what happens when they go to the store? What are they like when
Right.
when their car's not running right? Or what are they like, what's their relationship like at home? And, I feel sad for them a lot of times because they can't be
Yes.
happy
Right. Getting along with people is an important ingredient in your own personal happiness. It really is.
in your
Uh,
health. Your health, just be nice to people. And don't get so worked up if someone who's an idiot says stuff to you. Just like someone will say, and so said this about what you posted. I'm like, okay, the guy's a moron. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna hurt my feelings.
right. No,
Maybe in
that's
a
the
year
thing.
he'll agree with me, but it might take him a while to figure it out.
One of the great pieces of wisdom I absorbed early from Twitter is that I don't have to attend every argument to which I'm invited because there are people out there just looking to draw you into whatever conflict they can get for the
Yeah. I used to get roped in. People would say, prove your religion. I can't prove it to you, dude. Let me start a podcast and you can listen to these people's stories and see if it's real or not. Right?
afternoon.
Like if you can explain it better than me, okay, that's cool. But, obviously, like we've talked about before, if you don't believe the Bible and I start quoting scripture to you, you go, okay, I don't believe that. I don't believe
Right.
that book. It's not true. Okay. You know what I mean?
Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Yes, I don't consider the Bible a credible authority, so I don't know how you know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Right. So
But he
we
loves
all
me,
have
by
these
the
different.
way, for the record.
But what's that?
But he loves me, by the way. He loves you
I no,
too.
I, I
He loves
I
us all,
understand.
man. He's a
I'm
cool
posing it
dude.
as an epistemic question, not a theological question. Um, all right, on my sheet of notes here, what I wanted to bring up to you, I have two other things,
This used
and
to be my podcast. Now I get Mike on here and
that
now
that's
I'm
just
the.
taken over.
This is
The
awesome,
two other
man.
topics, and we can go in whatever order you want, or we can exclude one if you're not interested in pursuing it. But one is Trump and kayfabe, and this is my own kayfabe reading of Trump. And I don't know if you know what kayfabe is.
I
And
don't know what kayfabe is.
think of it as fake wrestling, with having the guy that you're supposed to like, that's the face, and having the guy that you're supposed to hate, and that's the heel. Trump and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
kayfabe. I got a thing to say about that I want to run by you.
Yeah, let's hear it, man. Let's do that.
Okay.
Might as
Uh,
well. I haven't
so
been kicked off of YouTube for a while, so I might as well take my chances.
well, my take on Trump back in 2016 was that he was a hit with wrestling crowds. He was always a hit on TV with various
MMA,
groups. What's that?
mixed martial arts crowd loves
Yes, the MMA. Yes, I
the
didn't hear.
the
Yes, that
the
stuff.
indie
He was
racer
a hit with
guys. Yeah, yeah.
that crowd because he has a fundamental grasp of how kayfabe works. How you draw people into an entertainment that you make bigger than life. There's a lot of hype. There's a good guy. There's a bad guy. He applied that stuff to The Apprentice. I assume I didn't watch it, but that's his whole persona. He understands that stuff.
And he
And in
understands
2016,
what's it, the art of war?
Sun Tzu, yeah.
Sun Tzu, yeah.
So
So
that's part of what he's getting into. Yes, those principles, right? He In 2016, when he's elected, what he does, my read on it at the time was he's great. He's always been a natural kayfabe. And what he's doing is in the world of wrestling, he's going over as a heel. That is, to go over with the audience as the heel is to be believably the person everybody loves to hate. And that's absolutely what his first presidency was. Everybody in the media, and it's artificial. The media hatred of Trump was artificial. I'm not saying that came from an organic grassroots place. That's the media telling people how to feel about Trump. But nevertheless, it seemed to work in 2016 to 2020. We had the whole country like, he's the president, but everybody hates it. Everybody thinks he's a bad guy. And Joe Biden is such a nice guy. How we got there, I don't know. But that's the argument. He's going to be decent, unlike Trump, who's such a mean guy.
Mean tweets, man. He got taken off Twitter and all that.
Yeah, those mean tweets. So here's what I never expected to happen. Here we are in 2024. I don't know what's going to happen with the election, but I do know what's happening right now. Trump is definitely the populist candidate. The person people don't like is either Biden or Harris, depending upon who their ire is focused on. But people seem to be responding to Trump. And this is what's crazy. This is the part of the kayfabe equation that is impossible for me to accept. Trump seems to be going over not as a heel, but as a face. And he's not just going over with the masses of the American people as a face. I have a lot of nits to pick with Trump. He didn't let Assange out. He renewed the Patriot Act, which is the worst piece of legislation in American history and which was authored by Joe Biden, wasn't renewed by Joe Biden. That was renewed by Trump. So I got problems with the guy.
Project Warp Speed.
There's a perfect example.
Right.
Who started the lockdowns? Who didn't fire Fauci? I got quibbles.
One day, I can't figure that part out. There's some stuff I don't figure out. But what I will say is he did not mandate the vaccine. Mandates where I have the biggest problem.
I 100% agree. So people who say, yeah, he gave us lockdowns. Yeah, he didn't fire Fauci, but at least he didn't mandate that stuff. And I'll agree. He didn't. Of course, he couldn't have. He wasn't in office when it was available to be mandated. So we're giving him credit for something that he didn't do that he could not have done. But it is true. He didn't do that. The other guy did. And you want to blame the other guy more. I understand that. But here's what's baffling to me. I'm about your age. I bet you grew up about as clueless about Watergate in your early years as I did. That is, my parents talked about Watergate. My parents talked about Gerald Ford succeeding Nixon, but I was confused. I remember in 1976, I'm 8 years old. This guy named Carter is running against Ford, and I'm looking at an almanac, and Nixon was elected in 72. Why isn't Carter running against Nixon? Why is Nixon no longer president? My parents had to give me this story, and they start to fill in the blanks. And I'm like, and so is Nixon in prison? And the answer is no. Ford pardoned Nixon. He what? The guy at the highest level broke the law, and then the guy that replaced him pardoned him? Is that how we handle? And I'm 8 years old, and I don't have the vocabulary to express this, but any 8-year-old can appreciate if you don't have accountability at the highest level, you don't really have it anyway. There's got to be accountability in a system. You don't just pardon if you break the law at the highest levels, you don't just get pardoned for that. Ford can't come out. He cannot seriously come to the American people with this BS cock and bull story that the nation needs to heal. So I have to let Nixon off the hook. And then here I am watching Life, Liberty, and Levin with my dad, who's a big Life, Liberty, and Levin fan. And I'm getting to watch Trump on Life, Liberty, and Levin. And Trump makes the exact same case as Gerald Ford. When I was president, I could have gone after Hillary. She used BreachBit. She destroyed evidence that the FBI had acquired. But I thought to myself, do I want to be the sort of president who is this vindictive? Or do I want to let our nation heal? And I'm not quoting him exactly, but you can go see the interview.
Yeah, I saw the interview with Dr. Phil. He had an interview like that too. And it's, what do you do? I think what do you do? It's one of those hard situations
It,
because you can't
well,
win. No matter what you say, if you go, I'm going after these guys, then they'll say he's going to be he's going to be a dictator. If you
right.
say I'm not going to come after him, then other people get. So you go, okay, what's the law say?
There's no
Let's follow the
accountability.
let's
Right.
follow the. Then he said, some of these people I'm going to go after with the full intention. And so, you know, it's funny. We'll get back to spiritual stuff for a minute. Like, look at Jesus on the cross. If he's all powerful, all this stuff. I'm on the cross and these guys are spitting at me and throwing stuff at me and poking me with sticks. Don't you think I'd say, hey, Dad, can you send a couple of lightning bolts and just take these guys out?
Right.
But he
Right.
said, no,
Right.
forgive them for they know not what they do. And so some of these people are so brainwashed and and this is the important part of you and I talking is we have to listen to other perspectives like that in medicine, like low carb, keto, all these things. Now you look what's happening, right? Robert Kennedy, the means, like Joe Rogan, all these people are saying, look, metabolic health. Like if we care about our people, we care about metabolic health. Nobody, and we know the numbers of who was dying. There's no question. It's undeniable that metabolically sick were the ones dying, right,
Right.
of COVID. So you go, how come no one focused on that? How come no one said, hey, let's, the only country who did that I know of, El Salvador. Of all places on earth, El
There you
Salvador
go.
was running public health. You got to exercise, you got to drink water, you got to get outside in the sun, you got to do all this stuff we're talking about. So you say, if you're in charge, and this is why this metabolic health revolution that's coming, we're seeing huge changes in mental health. And like we have a mental health crisis in the country, right? We have all of these things we have to look at and say, how do we come together and make this better? Right. At some point, that I mean, our health is a disaster. Medicare is on life support, right? So how do we do it? How do we fix it? We got to focus on root cause. We got to focus on how to get people to be kind and decent, not vengeful and hateful and all that stuff. So it's right because is Trump going to be Old Testament or New Testament is the question, right?
I don't know. Well, that's your question. My question is he going to be a face or a heel? And my take from watching that Levin interview is he's saying this thing that when I heard it from Ford, it made me so mad. But when I'm hearing it from Trump, I know the lawfare against him is crazy. The Biden Harris administration is so off the chain despicable that Trump has my sympathy. I don't want Trump
It
to
is
have my
amazing. Isn't that
sympathy.
an amazing thing? As you say, he has my sympathy. And Greg Gutfeld said it. I think he said it best. Like, okay, you're basically a defendant in a trial. You're innocent. Who are you going to pick to be your attorney? The guy who's a total jerk that everyone's like, oh no, here comes this guy. This guy's going to like throw everything, right? Like OJ had the best attorneys, right? People go, oh my gosh, these guys are so good. And or do you want the guy who's so nice that says, oh, we'll send him to prison for a few years. Oh yeah, whatever, right? You don't want that person. You want the person who's going to be your advocate, right?
Right.
If you're in trial, you go, I want the meanest attorney I can get. I want them on my side. I don't want them on the other side.
Right. Well, I hope. I guess the happy resolution of our perspectives is that he does go over as a face, and that face is an Old Testament vengeful God who takes the countermeasures necessary to put America back on the track of respecting things like freedom
Yeah.
of speech.
The way I look at it is really, and I'll go from medicine all the way down. I mean, I was just reading yesterday and it's like Paul Thacker. Do you know Paul Thacker?
I know the name, and I know some positions, perhaps.
Well, this is personal to me, but the, the ABIM, American Board of Internal Medicine, the head guy there, like going back in 2008, they said doctors, rank and file doctors, can't take a pen from a drug company because it will bias us in 2008. So we weren't allowed to get pens anymore. That would, because if you look at the pen, it might alter how you write the prescription. So the governing body who made that rule, guess what their bylaw says? We could take any amount of money, any personal objects, cars, and we don't have to disclose it. You're like, what? And then they come out and they go, if you say anything about this certain product, then we're gonna take your medical license. So, well, wait a
Huh.
minute. And by the way, the head of this organization, I won't name him because I don't want to like be spiteful, but the point is, he was represented by the same PR firm as Moderna, Pfizer, all these
Huh.
pharma companies. And you go, oh, isn't that a conflict of interest? I can't take a pen because I might, but you can take all this stuff and not have to disclose it. Yeah, those kind of things you go, hmm. And it's all written. Paul Thacker did a great job of going through and documenting all this stuff. Well, it
Right.
was
Right. Right.
actually he did it for Pierre Corey, who got his ABIM stuff attacked, and that. So I switched my governing board because I'm like, I don't want someone. You guys don't, you, guys, and subsequent. I mean, the thing is, look, if you say there's rules, tell me what the rules are, right?
Right.
basically for us doctors, it was like, okay, you're going to be driving on this road. I'm like, what's the speed limit? We'll tell you later.
Right. We'll let you know later if
Oh, it was 4 miles an hour. You were going 50. Okay, we're taking you to prison. That's what I mean. It was crazy. Like, what's misinformation? Tell me what the right information is, and then I'll know not what misinformation is. But if no one knows no one knew, and everything kept changing, and it was all crazy. But okay, let's get all your topics. I knew I
oh.
think we covered just about everything. We could talk about sex and religion, I guess.
Well, we can talk about what if you have a topic you want to go to. We got the ones that were most important. My last
No,
one is a
man,
neighbor
I love
story.
it. I love it.
I usually tell you a neighbor story, and I have another one for you now if you have time for
Yeah,
neighbor.
yeah.
So I think I've had occasion on both of the other podcasts to mention that both my wife and I love to be nice to our neighbors, not for the sake of cultivating a
It's
relationship with them,
biblical, man.
but yes, it's just this karmic thing. If we're nice to our
No, it's
neighbors,
biblical.
people are going to be nice to our parents back in El Paso.
Yeah.
And what's the good neighbor policy? But do unto thy neighbor, right? That you're biblical, and the golden rule is what you're getting at. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No, I think it's a universal thing. Like you go, be decent, right?
Right. Everyone can get into that.
Like
So
all my listeners are decent, nice people, so it makes it nice.
right. Well, that's what we're for. Decent, nice. We're for that. We want to promote decent, nice people. So what we do is we are great to our neighbors around us in the hope that Marn's mother and my parents will be treated great by their neighbors. And it works out that way. We don't make it work out that way, but the universe does deliver. And my mother-in-law has one of the kindest couples we've ever met living right next to her, doing a great job taking care of her. So, but on our trip to Iceland, our mother-in-law came to house sit for us so that our dog could stay in the house and my wife's plants could get watered and all that. So she came to stay with us for a couple of weeks. And the thing is, we're nice to our neighbors so that her neighbors will be nice to her, not so that our neighbors will be nice to her, because she doesn't usually live here. But for 2 weeks, she did live here. So for 2 weeks, grandma's in Austin and her three nephews, which are 5 minutes away in town, can come stay at Auntie's house, but Auntie's not there, grandma's there, and they get to have sleepovers and do all this stuff. Well, when we get back from I'm sorry, the first quick story. While we're in Iceland, we get a text from my neighbor, Zach. And it comes in, we're jet lagged, we're frantically negotiating a foreign country in a foreign language. We're not clear on what's going on. We look at this text, and our first impression of it is, oh my God, the power's gone out and we need to get the generator hooked up to the house. But then we read it again, and no, it's not that the power is going to go out. It's that there's a storm and the power might go out. And then we read it again, and no, it's not that there is a storm. It's that there's a storm in the Gulf of Mexico, and 48 hours from now, if it doesn't change course, it'll be in Austin. And if it does land in Austin, the power might go out. And if the power did go out, how would my neighbor hook up my generator to give power to my house? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, my mother-in-law is a worrier, and she's got my neighbor worked up about this contingency of the storm hasn't even hit land yet. We've already got a power outage in Austin, and we got to set up the thing. So we don't want to do any of that. So we just tell the neighbor, hey, don't worry about it, man. If the power goes out, my wife's brother is 5 minutes away. He'll come pick her up and take her to his house with our dog. They'll be fine. That's fine. No worry. Don't worry about it. So we continue our vacation. We get back. I've been gone 2 weeks. I kind of walk around the backyard to see what shape things are in. And I see a ladder and a rake near our fig tree. And I haven't thought about this for more than 2 weeks, but this was an argument my wife had with my mother-in-law before we left. She wants us to get the figs out of the fig tree before the birds eat them all so she can make fig jam. But the figs aren't ripe yet. And besides, my wife wants the whole reason we have the fig tree is to attract birds to the yard to eat the figs. That's what my wife wants, is for the birds to eat the figs. But my mother-in-law does not want the birds to have the figs. My mother-in-law wants the figs to be turned into jam. And so she tells me to go get a ladder and a rake and claw all the figs out of the tree, even though they're not ripe. And she's going to figure out how to ripen them when she gets back to El Paso. She's going to transport a suitcase full of figs and newspaper on a plane back to El Paso to make fig jam. I could buy you some fig jam. So anyway, she tells me to do this, and I don't want to because it sounds crazy. But you're in my position, I'm sure, Brian, you can relate. It doesn't matter if I want to. My mother-in-law has asked me to do this, and I'm going to have to do it. The only reason I don't do it is because my wife tells me not to, because she wants the birds to eat the fruit. Take the figs off the tree. They'll ripen after we get back from Iceland. I'll watch the birds from my deck. It'll be great. Leave them alone. So I was going to do it when told by
See,
my mother.
now you know how Trump thinks. Like, no matter what you do, you're gonna get in trouble with the people, right?
Exactly right. But
You can't
not like
win.
Trump, because the difference for Trump is no matter what he does is wrong. And in my case, doing what my wife said was right. It wasn't just what I wanted.
So
to
you
do.
didn't do it, and then your
So
mother-in-law, I know she went up in this stupid tree.
I didn't do it. Well, so that's what you're thinking. I'm in the backyard looking at that stuff, and I come in and I say, Tony, you're in your 80s. Did you get up on a ladder and claw the figs out of our fig tree? Because that's not wise. And she said, nope, Zach did it. She brought our neighbor, our poor neighbor. She brought him over to get up on the ladder and claw all the figs out of the tree so she could fill up a new.
Mom was worried about the figs, man. She wants to make that jam. Did she make the jam?
So the story in one way is a sense of how a stubborn mother-in-law got her way in the end. I guess that's the way she tells the story. But the way I tell the story is we're good to our neighbor so that her neighbors will be good to her. And it turns out that our neighbor had to be good to her while she was house sitting for us. And not only did he do it, but he didn't even, I would have texted like, are you sure this is a good idea for me to go up on a ladder and claw all these figs out of you? Is that what you want me to do? But he didn't even she asked him to do it. He just came over and did it. And man, here's the concession to Christianity. If everything's about treating your neighbor right and the hope that your neighbor will treat you right, it's a nice way to live. It's a good rule for social conduct.
Well, Jesus cursed the fig tree because it wasn't producing figs. I got to go back and look at that one. I remember that. I'm like,
we need Jesus to come curse our.
You got to produce the fruit, yeah, and then all the fruit comes off. Or the big storm could have came and knocked them all off, and you wouldn't have to go up there. You know, you never know how things go. If you're patient enough, see what happens. But it's funny. Yeah, it is funny. Like she gets something in her head, and she's like, "I want that. I want the figs. I want to." So
that's what it is.
I'll take you to the fig store. Like you're like me. I'm like, I'm not getting up there and getting all the figs out. The birds will eat them. Because here we do that. We put up stuff in our back fence, and we put a bird seed here, and those birds are like, it's gonna cost me $10,000 for feeding the birds because they like go like there's like 8 finches on this thing all the time, and they just eat all of them in one day. I was like, you guys don't like, shouldn't you wait? Like, chill out a little bit. The hummingbirds, it's so beautiful though. You get nature around you, and it's nice. But I agree with you. Get out in the sun for an hour and go do your pull-ups and go do what you enjoy, and then you're more creative and you could do stuff and get along better with people. And yeah, but my neighbor's here, and it's the craziest thing. California, I'm just gonna tell people, like in my neighborhood, like we walk, no one will go by you without saying hello, waving, stopping. You want to play with their dog, whatever. When I go back to California, like I was with my buddy, I go, let's see how many people wave to us when we wait. Like no one did. I think one lady did ultimately to prove me wrong, but talking 40 people and everyone turned their head down, looked away, and just like not engaging. It's amazing. And when you're in that situation, but it's knowing your neighbors. My neighbors, I can call them, hey, take care of this. I'll take care of their stuff. If I'm out of town, they take the garbage cans down or take theirs out when they're, I mean, it's so nice to be able to do that and reciprocate, and it all works out. So hopefully, people get the wisdom, of that, of just being a decent person. Ultimately, you don't have to agree on every dang thing. Like people go, why'd you have that person on? He doesn't agree with you on that. I don't care. I like the guy. Whatever, we could talk about. And ultimately, I think that it's like, and I think this is a take-home message for people is some people are going to vote different than you. They're going to cancel your vote out. They're going to, whatever it is, like, look at them. Are they nice to their family? Are they nice to their kids? Are they nice? What's their perspective on life? And you say, why are you voting that way? And you say, oh, okay, I get it. I get your perspective. Some people, I don't get their perspective, but that's their perspective. I'm like, okay, that's your reasoning. Doesn't make sense. But
as long as the outcomes you're getting are the outcomes you want. If you're
you go, what matters? What matters? And I had this discussion with someone. I want my family to be safe. I want my community to be safe. I want the, people not to be depressed and losing their businesses. I want the economy to be better. But really, ultimately, what you come down to, and this is the take home, I think, is be kind to yourself, be kind to others, be kind to your neighbors, get along as a community, you're going to have different religious beliefs, you're going to have different cultures, but if you can appreciate the differences and go, it's cool you guys think that way. Why do you think that way? And you understand, right? And so you put yourself in their position, but if you're not allowed to talk about it, then no one ever gets better, right?
That's look, man. One thing that we definitely agree with each other. I think we've gone the whole time and not mentioned Ivor Cummins. But one thing that we share with Ivor
You just
Cummins
did, man. You just
is
blew it.
an unabashed commitment to free speech, man. We are free speech, absolute. You have to be able to say why that solution is not working for you. That doesn't mean you have to be able to impose what you prefer on everybody else, but you have to be able to say what we're doing right now is not doing it for me. You have to be able to express that.
Yeah, and all this stuff when you go, okay, do you think standing in a circle makes a difference 6 feet apart? And they had no data on that. And Ivor was absolutely right. But the ridicule and the mockery, and they say you're killing people, you're a savage, and all this stuff. You go, he was right. Ultimately, he was right. But
Right.
I was just looking at all the people that were right that got killed, and you go, okay, poor guys. But Galileo, right? He was right,
Right.
so they killed him. The church killed him, so I'll take your side on that one. And then
Even though
yeah,
you're a Catholic.
yeah, but then Semmelweis said, "Hey, I think these germ things are causing all these problems. Whenever I wash my hands, wherever they wash their hands, people aren't dying. If they don't wash their hands, they die." And they go, "You're crazy." They locked him up and he died in a sane asylum, right?
Right. And
So
even if it's not death, the not listening to the guy who figured out what causes ulcers and demonstrated it on his own body, and just still not changing the policy. Oh, yep, good proof, good evidence. We're going to keep doing things the old way because that's really profitable. So,
yeah, and if you go out in the sun and you exercise and you feel good and you're productive and everything's great, it's like keep doing that. If you go out in the sun, and you
100%.
get sunburn every day, I might say, "Hey, it's not a good idea." Right? Right. So you have to go by what works and what doesn't work, and really ultimately let people decide. Let people decide for themselves what's the best path forward. That's what I believe. That's what we both believe, and that's kind of what it's funny because I think COVID brought us closer together because we're like, wait, this doesn't make does this make sense to you? We're on different sides of the aisle, and it doesn't make sense to any of us. So maybe we need to look at that. And if we
Right.
had this conversation 2 years ago, it would be taken down for sure. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, that's unfortunately that is why I abandoned my YouTube channel. Censorship, which is crazy. Just crazy.
Oh, I got taken out 4 times. I don't even know if I'm on there anymore, to tell you the truth. And 4 times were all with doctors. The only one that the one that didn't, Ivor Cummins didn't get taken down. I don't think they had
He's
evidence.
got them. He knows how to study the system and what triggers it
He
and
knows
what
what
exact words not
words
to
or
say.
something. Cause I couldn't believe it. Cause like, oh, this won't last long. This will be down in a few minutes. Peter McCullough was like 17 seconds. That's my record. Uh, Patricia Lee, who's a good friend of mine, who came out as a whistleblower. I mean, all these people that are great docs, they got taken out for medical misinformation for saying what they're saying in clinic, and you go, that's not good. Without contacting us and asking us questions, doesn't
Right.
make sense.
And on the
I have the
basis
records,
of
I have the
misinformation.
chart. You could explain it to me then.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not based on being right or wrong. It's based on whether you're with the narrative. It's not about what time will show in the future. At this time, everyone was supposed to believe blank. And if you didn't believe blank, whether blank was true or not, you were a bad person. That's just a crazy way. I mean, we are completely untethered from reality in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think and I think that's another great thing is that we can be uh have different even different outcomes looking at the same data based on our preconceived notions or whatever it is, right?
Right.
But when you have common sense and you have critical thinking, you go, to both of us, this doesn't make sense.
Right.
We just say this doesn't make sense, and and go, we may not agree on something, but we can both critically think about it and say and you may say I can critically think and I don't believe in religion. I critically think I think it does matter, right? So
Right.
that's what's great about it. Is that you have to be able to do that and sit down and say, okay, we agree to disagree at the end of the day. So that's something we've lost, and I think it's coming back. You know,
Right.
I think in Austin, you get if you say something good about Trump, they're going to kick you out of Austin. You have to move to
I
California.
I have noticed someone on Twitter was asking about yard signs, and I do have a neighbor with a, a pro-Democrat administration sign, but it's a Senate race. I don't see any Biden stuff. I don't see Kamala stuff. I blue as Austin is, there are certain places where I wouldn't talk comfortably about stuff, but just the way living in Austin in 2024, it does not feel like the blue no matter who town that it usually is.
Really?
Maybe,
Wow.
well, it could be that even in Austin, the most diehard Kamala supporter knows Texas is going for Trump. So I'm not concerned about
Yeah,
reconciling.
it's like being a conservative in California. Like you know which way it's gonna go, so it's like
Right.
okay,
It
you can go
doesn't
out there and
matter.
march, and yeah, it's like some things are kind of a foregone conclusion for sure.
Right.
But you know, you kind of go say, what kind of country do I want to have? I vote that way, and then let other people vote the way if they want their country to be different. But I've been to Cuba, I've been to a lot of countries. I go, I don't think I want that. We'll talk about Cuba next time. We'll talk about
All
Cuba
right.
and El Salvador and Vietnam and different places that are fun to go to.
All
But
right.
Iceland was
Sure.
good. You had
Yeah.
fun and you enjoyed it. It was
I
beautiful.
Iceland was an amazing experience, very expensive, and we don't anticipate return.
Okay,
So
got
yeah,
it.
we loved it. We did it. We had some bad weather and missed some things that we're just probably never in our lives going to get to do because we're not going to go back to pick up those things that the wind kept us from doing. And it's just, and that's not a comment on Iceland. We're in our 50s. We were in a camper van. Um,
Yeah,
it's it it was enough
it
for us.
sounded good at the time, and then
Yeah,
you go and you go. It was
it
an
felt
experience, but you'll have stuff you'll laugh about. Like you can talk about jumping into the cold river and jumping into the hot
yes.
tub and all those kind of fun. There's always good. So that's awesome stuff. So Mike, do you have any last parting word of wisdom?
Well, because of what you were saying earlier, I figured out that to answer the usual parting question, what's life's best medicine? I can
Yeah,
say that I can agree with the Christian about this. Remember that Jesus said, by their fruits ye shall know them, or by their fruits shall ye know them, depending on your translation. I don't speak Aramaic, so I don't know the original. But the point is, outcomes matter, and don't lose focus on your outcomes. Happy marriages matter. What did it take to get there? Different things for different couples. But happy marriages, it's, the older we get, Brian, I'm sure the more we both think this relationship that I have with this woman that I've known for over 30 years is the most important thing in my life to me. That's just, it's amazing to be here. And how we had to get here was our process. And how you got there is your process. And we have to respect other. What's the fruit? It's by their fruits.
we're major outliers too. I was
What's
looking at
that?
the day. We're major outliers that way because how many people are married 30 years in a
Oh,
marriage, right? It's
right.
it's 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 a small amount. I think it's like 12% or 8% or something like that.
And I suspect they weren't focused on the outcome of having a happy marriage. I think they were probably focused on the outcome of using their marriage to be happy individuals. That's not what a marriage is. A marriage is about two people partnering together to make their lives better. It's not about one person.
Yeah, and I
So
think that goes back to the gender roles and goes to those things. And when you that's what makes us great is that we come together and I'll tell you, if you want to destroy a society, look around the world. You destroy the family unit, you destroy
uh-huh.
marriages, you destroy these things, and kids don't have role models, and it's a huge thing. So I think if you want to save the world, save your family first. Yeah, right.
That's
Save
what
your
you
family
can do.
first and do that, and I think if you're out doing good things, you're going to be better at home. All those things. I think so many people struggle. They've accomplished a lot, but they just struggle with being decent people, and that's hard. So I think you and I are doing all right. One of
Yeah,
these days
I'm
we'll have a
grateful.
steak in Austin, or you can come to Arizona or California. We'll make it happen.
All right.
So, anyways, man, thanks again for joining me. And everyone, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and there's so much great wisdom. I love having Mike on. It's just like old friends, just sitting down and having a cup of coffee together, and it's fun to discuss things and debate things a little bit. And it's amazing how much we think alike, and our lives are alike. So, keep up the good work, man, and everyone. Again, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and get out there in your community, do something nice. Karma, golden rule, whatever you want to call it. Have a great weekend. Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.